I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember, bacon makes everything better.
Welcome back into the fifth quarter here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I am Mike Waddell. He is the coach, Jim Collins, and we are here each and every week to recap the weekend that was in college football here in the bold North State. We're going to talk about Carolina and East Carolina in our first segment. Coming up later in the show, we're going to talk with Eric Luss, the editor-in-chief of NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com, who will recap the NCAA Division II playoff field, which was announced on Sunday night. And then Jim and I are going to go into the X mailbag, and we're going to look at a couple of issues that have come up in the world of social media over the past week as they intersect with college football. And we're going to talk about those things, prey on Jim's 40-plus years of experience on the college football sideline and my experience as a former director of athletics. But first up, let's go to Chapel Hill and talk about the Tar Heels. Jim, the Tar Heels of Mack Brown have reached bowl eligibility, which means that they are assured of no less than a 500 record in college football here in 2024. And they look pretty good against a Wake Forest team that has been lost for most of 2024.
Yes, they did. They played well enough to win on Saturday. Not their best effort of the last 3 weeks. I can't say that they used this open date quite as well as they used the previous open date to move forward. But they did play well enough to win, and Wake Forest continues to shoot themselves in the proverbial foot with turnovers and penalties and pre-snap penalties. You just can't do those things. But Wake was in the game until the very end and had a chance to make it very interesting. But the North Carolina defense came through and played very well again. I thought the North Carolina offense, except for the star of the North Carolina offense, a guy by the name of Omarion Hampton, number 28, the rest of the North Carolina offense kind of took a little step backwards in the game. But Omarion carried them, and what a tremendous game he had for them.
He's an absolutely tremendous person, too. I enjoyed meeting him along with David Glenn at the ACC football kickoff this past July, and he had a career-high 35 carries for 244 yards. You and I are texting the game, and we're saying, hey, this guy is out of this world. You're saying, why aren't they giving it to him more? I mean, because Jacoby Criswell is just not that good, okay? He's a 13 quarterback. He's not supposed to be that good. He wasn't supposed to play. But he was brutal. His center had back-to-back penalties on a drive, which were just bizarre. And if not for Omarion Hampton going for a career-high 244 yards, I mean, he was making me think of Kelvin Bryant in 1981, the Space Cowboy, Mike Voigt, James Boom Boom Betterson. I mean, he's rolling through there. I can go all back in the day now with my old-school Tar Heel tailbacks. But, man, Omarion was amazing. I mean, 244 yards. Without him, Carolina would not have won that football game.
You went way back in history there, Mike, without a doubt. But I sent you this text last night, and excuse me for looking down, but I'm going to read it. The Tar Heels had 67 plays. Omarion Hampton touched the ball on 40 of those plays, 35 carries and 5 receptions. He was responsible for 260 of the 362 yards in the game. Send his ass to New York. And I'm serious when I say that. He's an outstanding player. We all know what a good person he is, but man, is he tough? Is he physical? He protects, he catches, he does it all, without a doubt.
You got to really feel for poor Dave Clawson of Wake Forest. I mean, this guy, not only has he lost multiple quarterbacks through the transfer portal, but now he's down to like the third or fourth quarterback.
With the COVID years and the things that went on with that, the Deacons were probably one of the most experienced and veteran teams in college football. At one point, and I may be off here, but I'm going to use this number. I think they had 38 at one point, 38 fifth, sixth, and seventh year players on their team. So they had lots and lots of veteran players on their team. And I listened to Coach Clawson. I have a lot of respect for Coach Clawson. He's a good football coach, and they've done not a good job, but a tremendous job at a place there it's very difficult to win. So I'll give them a lot of credit. But he's talking about in his press conference, he's talking about fifth and sixth year players that are making mistakes, pre-snap penalties. The center had a pre-snap penalty, turnovers, three turnovers down deep in the territory, a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown by the Tar Heels. So it's hard to win that way, but still they lose by a touchdown. So they were in the game all the way and had a chance with it at 24-17 to really make it an interesting game, and then they turn it over again.
They turn it over. They go down 31-17, but then they come back. I mean, Carolina could not put them away. I mean, they got a really, really strong performance by their defense late in the game, but the defense was suspect. And Wake Forest just runs that dadgum, that offense where their RPOs drag more than anything else. It's like they're trying to pull taffy, or they're pulling my teeth out, because I'm sitting there saying, just tackle somebody. How frustrating is it if fans like me feel frustrated in watching that from a defender perspective? How did you feel when you were trying to defend against that Wake Forest RPO?
Very, very difficult. The slow mesh and the long ride that they have is so difficult, and the scheme that they use up front, it's a zone blocking scheme, but they're in very tight, and the back and the quarterback actually get in behind the offensive line in the mesh, and it becomes very difficult to find them. And they ride it and ride it and ride it. You can see me, I'm riding that right now as I talk about it. They ride it so long, and then all of a sudden it pops, and the running back is through for 5, 6, 7 yards. Or unfortunately, they're not good enough at quarterback right now to really be effective in the RPO game. And the other place they're not as good as they have been is at wide receiver. In their heyday, when they were really, really good with Coach Clawson, they had excellent receivers that could make plays in space and catch the football and get vertical on you and do those things. There's no doubt that they're not as good. They've got the young kid right now that's a good player, but their veteran players are not playing quite as well as they have in the past. And I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for the staff. It's frustrating for Coach Clawson, and they're up against they're facing needing to win 2 games to make sure they can get to a 500 season at this point in time.
Let's talk about that. They rolled in, the Deeks did, into Orange County and Kenan Stadium, needing 2 more wins in their last 3 games to get to bowl eligibility, which is 500. If you are just 500, and you can even be, 1 game under 500 and still maybe get into a bowl game. That's how average you have to be to make the postseason now in college football. But the Deeks now hit the road one last time this coming weekend when they play at number 12 Miami. I don't give them much of an opportunity to win down in Fort Lauderdale, and then they close out the regular season against in-state foe Duke. I still think that Duke and Wake Forest could have a really competitive game. That's not a slight on Duke, but it's Wake Forest being backed up against the wall. But I think that's going to be 5-7 and not 6-6.
Well, Mike, if you go back and look at the scores and as you go through Wake Forest season, the Ole Miss game, they were totally outmatched against Ole Miss, which a lot of people are overmatched against Ole Miss. But most every other game they've been in and had an opportunity to win, and it's been close at the end. So I think the Duke Wake game 2 weeks down the road has a chance to be an outstanding game, and one that will be an interesting matchup. And having spent so many years at Duke, the Wake game was always a great rivalry for us, and we struggled to play against Wake a lot of times. Lost games to them that we didn't feel like we should have lost, but it'll be a competitive game. But the game in Miami will be interesting. I'm not early in the year. I was sold on the Hurricanes as one of the best teams in the country. I don't know that I'm sold on the Hurricanes anymore. They're not playing well on defense at all, and without Cam Ward, they're as average as the day is long. Am I predicting an upset by the Deacons in Fort Lauderdale? The answer is no, but I think has a chance to be a close game if they can defend down the field. Now, if you look at Wake struggles to play pass defense. Well, they didn't struggle to play pass defense against Tar Heels. They played very well. They couldn't stop the run, but obviously they played pretty well down the field. Of course, Coach Brown was not happy with a couple of calls that happened or didn't get called during the game. So it'll be an interesting matchup for the Deacons as they go into Fort Lauderdale.
For Carolina, they play their final road game up at Chestnut Hill against Boston College on Saturday, then come home against rival NC State on November 30th. That's our next stop on the Old North State Tailgate Tour. We'll be out at the Friday Center engaging a lot of people. David Glenn will be talking to folks about the Carolina-NC State rivalry. Man, that ought to be a lot of fun. So coming out to the Friday Center, we'll be out there. We're still waiting on the game time for the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels on November 30th, but we look forward to seeing you out there. Staying into our North Carolina teams, boy, East Carolina under their interim head coach, Blake Harrell, is on a little bit of a tear. They were playing another North Carolina native in Kevin Wilson out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as the Golden Hurricane entertained East Carolina on Thursday night last week. Back-to-back Thursday night games for the Bucks. And Rajai Harris rushed for a pair of fourth-quarter touchdowns, and East Carolina stopped Tulsa on the 1-yard line, Jim. You got to love that defense by the Pirates. And they hang on for a 38-31 win. I did not like the call by the Golden Hurricane there on the goal line, and being a big 3 yards in a cloud of dust guy like Kevin Wilson is, longtime Oklahoma and later Ohio State offensive coordinator, they did not look very good. And you got to think he could be on the hot seat, but what a win for Blake Harrell and the Pirates.
Very good win for Blake and the Pirates. A good road win. They've won 3 in a row at this point in time. At Tulsa, I think this is Kevin's second year at Tulsa. Right. So I don't think there's any job issue. Now he may make staff changes. A very good friend of mine and a guy I worked for a long time. His son is the offensive coordinator at Tulsa by Steve Spurrier Jr. But I think Kevin calls most of the plays out there, so I'm not trying to place blame or direct it anywhere at any point in time. But at the same time, they put up 31 points. You'd like to think that you could win a game or two scoring 31 points, wouldn't you think? As a defensive football coach all my career, I would struggle giving up 38 and after my offense scored 31 and losing. Of course, I've been there, done that. If you're in this game long enough, you experience all these things without a doubt.
Let's go back to Rajai Harris. He finished with 114 yards for the Pirates on 18 carries. Caton Hauser, he had thrown for 5 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games, survived 3 interceptions, not his best game, but still 314 yards for East Carolina's offense and a touchdown. He also ran the ball for 43 yards. So it seems like under Mike Houston, they were going with a different quarterback. They struggled early on. Blake Harrell takes over. He changes in the quarterback. And sometimes can it be that simple that you just change one position or change one person in the coaching staff and you get all of a sudden a different team? Or is this just a team that took a while to mature into their own self-image?
You know what, Mike? If I had that answer, I might still be coaching and I might still be winning national championships at this point in time. But I do believe that sometimes playing the next player is a good option. Coach Spurrier sold us on that years ago. If the guy that you're putting out there is not playing well and you're not winning, play the next guy. Give him a chance. And obviously their next guy went out and has played very well, and they've won 3 games in a row. So it was a great decision. The interesting thing about coaching, Mike, and you were in athletic administration and been around this game as long as anybody. The decisions you make as a coach, whether it's the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, or whomever, the decisions you make, if they work, then you're a really smart guy. If they don't work, then you're a dumbass. So
you're an ace or an ass right there, my friend.
Exactly. So you're going to be second guessed one way or the other, and you hope that you make the right decisions based on your knowledge of the player and your selection of the player that's going to make the plays, and you install the game plan that fits that player, whether it be an offensive or a defensive game plan, and gives them the best opportunity to showcase their skills. Sometimes we as coaches, we overcoach and we think that we're going to out-scheme somebody's butt. Well, you don't out-scheme people. Players win games. You can do too much way too often, and you can coach yourself into a hole many, many times.
That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. This is the 5th quarter, and you're tuned in to the North Carolina Sports Network.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas & Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
It's the coach, Jim Collins, and me, Mike Waddell, with you here on the North Carolina Sports Network and the 5th quarter, where we talk everything North Carolina football. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll have Eric Lusk from NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com. He is busy crunching the numbers. It's not 1, not 2, but 3 South Atlantic Conference teams, Jim, make the NCAA Division II playoffs. We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. Right now, we're going to take a look at a variety of topics, some of them akin to the ACC in the state of North Carolina, some of them national college football issues. But I wanted to pick your brain and get into your head a little bit and get that 40 years of knowledge exposed right here on the 5th quarter. First of all, we're going to talk about the Big Four. We alluded to this earlier. The Big Four football attendance this year has been released. Still some home games to come, but NC State right now announcing that they are averaging 56,900 fans a game. That is not true. They only have 57,000 seats in Carter Finley Stadium, and they have not been near capacity for maybe but 1 game all season. But that's not out of the norm. College football departments will not necessarily announce the attendance. They'll announce the tickets distributed. That makes some of these other numbers pretty disturbing if they are following that credo, because at NC State, number 1 at 56,900 fans a game, North Carolina at a 50,000-seat stadium averaging 47,200 fans a game. Also, that's a tickets distributed number. East Carolina, 37,800, Jim, and App State, 34,800. They outdraw both Wake and Duke, but I don't think that's very surprising because Wake and Duke are private schools with a lot of their students and alumni, going from out of state, and App State and East Carolina, 2 of the better football environments in the Old North State. But does anything surprise you right there at those attendance numbers? And we'll talk a little bit about what I think those attendance numbers reveal. But do those surprise you in any way?
Not at all. Not one bit. I was coached in the ACC for a long time, and those numbers are pretty much what I experienced for almost 18 years of coaching in the ACC at Duke, and then at North Carolina, and coaching against them. And so it does not surprise me at all. I think what we're seeing is season tickets being bought and tickets being sold, but you don't see a whole lot of butts in the stands, and that's that's the difference. So the Duke numbers, the Wake numbers, the NC State numbers surprise me a little bit. The North Carolina numbers do not surprise me at all.
NC State would be only better than 2 SEC schools right now in their attendance. North Carolina is below them. I mean, yeah. That's concerning when you look at these numbers, which I will tell you, these numbers are not realistic. The actual attendance is much lower. And we did leave out Charlotte at 15,300, so they're drawing half of what Wake Forest does literally. Wake 30,600, Charlotte 15,300. But the Niners are a relatively new Division I football program. But once you realize all of these numbers are the physical reality of these programs, man, the gap is really big between not only the SEC and the Big Ten schools, but also Florida State, Clemson, Virginia Tech. That's at least $10 to $15 million difference in associated revenues with game days from ticket sales, concessions, parking, and you name it. Man, it starts to add up. And then you add in for, let's just say, North Carolina, NC State, Duke, and Wake, the revenue gap that is created with the house settlement, that's $20 million a year, and then the active NIL payroll number needed versus donor support. And I just don't see any logical way that NC State or North Carolina, just stay with the NC State and Carolina on this deal. I don't see how they can compete revenue-wise unless they move to another conference, because you're not going to make up that gap. And so you're talking about a payroll, you're talking about a house settlement, and you're talking about not being able to sell tickets and draw a crowd right there. I'm just wondering, where are these places going to get their revenue? Because it's not going to come from the corporate community. It's just not.
Well, that was going to be my answer to you, Mike. The corporate community is going to have to step up. And from an administrative standpoint, that's a challenge in itself. And to be the athletic director, and again, I'm speaking from a coaching standpoint. You can speak from the athletic director standpoint. They are up against some real challenges. I read an article earlier this week, or last week, I should say, that of the $20 million that's expected to be distributed at this point in time, they're projecting that 80 to 85% of that is going to go to football, and 10% of that is going to go to basketball. Well, people in this state are probably listening to this show say he's so full of crap, it's unbelievable. But folks, I'm not. That's
where the money comes from. It's a football world.
It is, and then when you look at the multiple sports that both, especially North Carolina and Duke they both have over 30 sports at this point in time. Where do the finances come? North Carolina and State and Duke, they all have excellent baseball teams. Where does their money come from to pay their athletes? So you're looking at a lot of sports that are going to split about 10%. So corporate money better show up at some point in time.
Let's go to the next topic on this, and it goes into the courtroom, but we're not talking about Florida State and Clemson against the ACC. We're talking about Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, his request for a temporary restraining order that would grant him another year of eligibility, but he sued the NCAA in federal court in Nashville on Friday, arguing that his 2 seasons playing at a junior college shouldn't count towards his Division I eligibility, since he was unable to profit from his name, image, and likeness during that time. Attorneys went in there, made the argument. Judge really wasn't having most of it. This will have another day in court. It'll get appealed. But man, this got your dander up a little bit.
Yeah, it did. It's ridiculous. I mean, we're going so far back in history, and we're reaching. And we've got attorneys that are searching for anything possible, and I don't mean to blame the attorneys. They're just trying to make a dollar, and I understand that, but they're taking advantage of a lot of things out there at this point in time. You know, we've been at this game a long time. Junior college eligibility has counted forever. So why now are we not going to count junior college eligibility? So that's to me, that's the dumbest lawsuit that I've heard in a long time.
Let's move on now. Let's talk about SMU. They're in the driver's seat in the Atlantic Coast Conference in their first season of Power 4 eligibility. And man, are they looking pretty good. But their head coach is Rhett Lashley, and he was upset about some things that were happening against those BC Eagles and Billy O'Brien this past weekend. He said that every time the Eagles tackled Kevin Jennings, they tried to twist his ankle. He said he told the referees, but they couldn't see it. Lashley's quote, "That's bad ball." I don't think that's probably the first time that you've seen that, Jim. How often are people actively trying to hurt other people in the bottom of piles or around piles?
There's things that happen, but to say that it happens on every play, every time they tackled him, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. Did somebody probably twist his ankle or stick their finger in the ear hole of his helmet or whatever? Yeah, there are things that go on in the bottom of the pile. You know, there are things that happen. Let's face it. Some people don't want to hear this because they don't want their son playing our game and doing the things that it happens. But this is a mean old nasty game. You've got people that run into each other at full speed, and they try to hurt you. That is what this game's all about, and that's why this game is not for everybody. I'm not saying that it didn't happen, but you know what? They won the game. Why? Let's not talk about this. We're okay with all this.
Now, SMU obviously is a surprise to a lot of people. They're in top of the standings right now in the ACC. But go back to the 80s. SMU was a household name. They were as big a name as Texas Tech or even Texas A&M in Texas at one point under former North Carolina assistant coach under Bill Dooley, Bobby Collins. He had the Pony Express going out there. Craig James and Eric Dickerson, both guys that went on to make name for themselves in the pros and in broadcasting. But what other than the payroll that Bobby was doing illegally at that time that they can do legally now had SMU so good back in the 80s? And how has it taken them almost 40 years to get back to national relevance?
Well, obviously, they're the only school that's faced the death penalty in college sports, and their payroll was as high as anybody in the country. But let me say this: in that era of college football, and they were not the only people that were doing illegal things. There were a lot of people that were buying players at that point in time. They just did a better. They just did a better job of buying the right players and putting them in a position to win. And they were good coaches also. And then for SMU to recover from the death penalty and fight their way back to where they are at this point in time with an opportunity to win the Atlantic Coast Conference. Can you believe I just said that? Atlantic Coast Conference with the team in Highland Park, Texas. SMU does not lack the funds to be able to compete at a very, very high level. There's a lot of money that's passed through the halls of Southern Methodist University, so they will be able to compete for a long, long time for players and for facilities and everything that it takes to win. So they'll be a contender for a long time.
Well, since Clemson's opted out of the NIL sweepstakes, Florida State's going to do it. That's the bane of their existence. And, Virginia Tech will do it. Other schools will do it. Louisville will be there. Miami, of course. But I got to tell you, if you ask me, and I lived 2 years in Dallas, I know a lot of guys who are SMU alums. The owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, and one of the best friends of David Glenn, is Tom Dundon, and he's an SMU graduate. These guys all have money. They have money to burn. And they're flashy. And Dallas is a fun town when you're winning. And right now, with Rhett on the football side and the guy they have as their basketball coach, they just stole away Andy from Southern Cal. This is going to be a problem. I mean, they are going to be a problem because they will buy people. And and that's a football area. So I got to tell you, if you give me a choice of whether I want to go play in Tallahassee and that toxicity, or I want to go to play for Rhett Lashley, who's a fun coach, plays a wide open style, do it in Dallas as opposed to Tallahassee, I'm going to Big D. I don't know about you, but I'm going to Big D. I think they are going to be a problem for the legacy teams of the ACC.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about it. They've already shown us that they compete. They're at a level right now. I mean, they're one win away from being in the ACC championship game. And it's bad on my part. I don't know who they close with to finish the season, but they're pardon me.
They're not going to lose.
No, I don't think
that has a chance to lose is maybe Miami when they have to go to Syracuse.
Right.
And if that happens, if Miami loses once, that means Clemson vaults in, assuming that, they don't have any more ACC games. So they play 1AA this week, and then they have South Carolina, who's damn good, in the regular season finale. But I think SMU's in there. It's a question of whether or not they're playing Miami or they're playing Clemson. I'm rooting for Clemson. I'd like for somebody from the historical ACC to actually make it, because I think it's pretty embarrassing for the legacy ACC teams to not even be in discussion mode right now other than Clemson. I think
I agree. I agree. I would favor that we get somebody in from the Carolinas or in the original ACC at this point in time, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's going to happen, because and it's not an ACC game, but the Tigers will be challenged by the Gamecocks. I can tell you that. Gamecocks play well in big games. Yeah.
If the Gamecocks didn't get rooked by the officials in the LSU game, they could literally be in playoff discussion right now. And kudos to Shane Beamer for all that he has done and been able to put that program back on its feet. One last thing out of the grab bag before we get to Eric Lusk from NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com and talk about the big weekend that was in college football elsewhere outside of the Big Four here in the Old North State. Let's talk about buyouts. You're starting to see coaches get bought out left and right. And one of the coaches that has been talked about being bought out, if you can believe it, is Brian Kelly, who, if he gets bought out this year, would be $60.8 million that LSU would have to pay him. Now, Jimbo Fisher got what, 75 million when he got bought out by A&M a few years ago. So, man, that's a lot of money to be paying out. But I know Brian Kelly pretty well. I helped hire him at Cincinnati, worked with the guy for 3 cool seasons, including an undefeated season before he bolted us after we finished 12-0 and won the Big East title and rolled off to Notre Dame. And then we had to play the Gators and Tebow's last game when Urban was saying, I quit, I'm back, I quit, I'm back. He's vacillating back and forth. Brian Kelly, I don't know if he can flip it, man. I tell you, when Brian gets to the point that he's reacting like that on the sideline, he is, along with Steve Spurrier, the best football coach I've ever worked with. Brilliant mind, incredibly intelligent. But his temper has been triggered to a point so early in his tenure there at LSU. Losing that 10-win season streak that he had is really going to bother him. I don't know if he really – I don't know if he can flip it around. And I don't know. Do you think LSU pulls the trigger and buys him out? Because they're crazy in Baton Rouge now.
Well, they are, and it's I don't think they will. I think if I were on that coaching staff, I might be preparing my resume to get it out very quickly, because I think there will be changes there. Because we live in a world, Mike, that it's not who gets the credit, it's who gets the blame.
Oh, sure.
There's lots of blame to go around, but I don't see LSU doing that, to be honest with you.
It would be a shocker, but in this day and age of college athletics, you never know. If the money is there and the right donors are upset and the pressure comes from above, that AD is going to pull that trigger. And it'll be fun to watch, especially down the stretch with LSU in what has turned out to be one of their most challenging seasons since the dismissal of Coach Ed Orgeron a few years ago, the year after he won the entire thing. So LSU, they have high expectations. Another place that has high expectations is Wingate. When we come back from this timeout, we're going to talk about the Bulldogs, the South Atlantic Conference champions, so far the only conference champions out of North Carolina college football. So do they rise, Jim, to the top of the North Carolina Football News Fabulous 15? We'll find out about that when Eric Luss joins us next right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Whether you are moving locally, nationally, or even internationally, and whether you're a residential or commercial customer, please consider our friends at XL Moving and Storage, an award-winning Allied Van Lines agent with offices in Greensboro and Raleigh. Thanks to their 25 years of experience helping North Carolinians all across the state with their moving and storage needs, XL has become the trusted hometown North Carolina moving services company. Our good friends Jim Dorsett and Jody Hatley, along with their hardworking staff, offer customized, tailored relocation and storage solutions to the people of North Carolina and beyond. Visit them online today at xlms.com. That's EXCELMS.com. The Original Salt Works has become a legendary breakfast, brunch, and lunch place in Wilmington for both locals and out-of-town visitors over the last 50-plus years. Our good friend Bob Hubbard owns the place, but he's also the one cooking your food and often roaming the dining room to greet you with a smile and to make sure your visit is a great one. Bob has been running the show at this unique roadside diner for more than 20 years now, and he and his friendly, hardworking staff aim to treat you like one of their own. Try Bob's homemade omelets, or special recipe grits for breakfast, or his legendary cheeseburgers for lunch. The Original Salt Works, your breakfast and lunch choice on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
The final segment of the fifth quarter, always our most engaging here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell, joined by the coach Jim Collins and the editor-in-chief of North Carolina Football News.com, Eric Lusk. And Eric, before we talk about Wingate, I want to ask Coach about the very special hat that he's wearing right here. LLB, tell us about this incredible organization that you help represent.
It is a wonderful organization, and it is called LLB stands for Live Like Bryant. And Bryant McDermott was my wife Yvonne and I's 13-year-old grandson that we tragically lost to an accident in February of 2022. Well, his parents, Brick and Laura is Yvonne's daughter, my stepdaughter. They have done a tremendous job in starting this foundation that contributes to many, many things athletically and all around the Charlotte area. And so anybody that is interested in doing something to help Charlotte area youth, they've done jersey giveaways, many things around the Charlotte area. But Live Like Bryant is the foundation that they started in his memory, and it's been a tremendous thing. We miss him every single day.
Well, I know you do, and God bless the parents and your entire family, Jim and Yvonne.
Yes.
what you're doing to keep Bryant's memory alive. The story, and people can Google about LLB and read about what they do with the jerseys, but it really is a tribute back to the spirit that made him such a special young man. And as we transition now forward and talk about North Carolina football, another great family environment, Eric Lusk is over at Wingate University, where Joe Reich was a longtime head coach. He ascended to the role of athletics director a little over a year ago, and Rashawn Jordan took over the team from his defensive coordinator position there with the Bulldogs, an in-house hire. I know Jim likes it when the DC gets the opportunity to be the HC, but boy, our man Rashawn has done a great job. We saw him at the Old North State tailgate a few weeks ago when they played Catawba in the South Atlantic Conference game. People were saying, hey, man, why didn't you go to Lenore-Ryan, or why didn't you go to Johnson C. Smith? Well, hey, one of those teams made the playoffs. One of them didn't. And Rashawn Jordan is sitting there as a rookie head coach, and he's got a trophy and a cigar in his office. He's pretty happy right now.
Yeah, definitely. Exciting day for Wingate. Proud to say we kind of picked this at the beginning of the year. We were ranking all the D2 teams. I started the year with Wingate on top. I just felt like, again, that combination of an experienced roster, a coach who knows the system, seamless transition. There's no threat by having Joe Reich still in the building. I mean, it kind of all added up. And they did lose to Carson Newman in September, and since then they've been on a tear. They've never given up more than a couple touchdowns a game. They've held teams for the season under 10 points a game. In Saturday's game against Carson Newman, 84 yards. That's all they allowed. 20 yards in the second half. I think that was their total yards for the second half. And they were just opportunistic offense. When they get a chance, they had Caleb Bonesteel. What a great football name. I just love that name. He came up with 5 field goals, career high for him. And checking through the record books that tied a South Atlantic Conference record. Only a couple of guys have that record. So, yeah, big day for them, and they'll be off to the postseason.
So they're off to the postseason along with Lenore-Ryan, who just gets by for their 9th win. A first-year program in Anderson led by my friend Bobby Lamb, who's done a great job with the Trojans launching program here in 2024. But Lenore-Ryan makes it out of the SAC.
Right.
Wingate makes it out of the SAC. Who's the third Division II team out of the SAC to make the national playoffs?
Carson Newman. They slipped in as well. So that Lenore-Ryan getting in, I think, is what knocked Johnson C. Smith out. When I saw the playoff brackets coming up, I saw Valdosta State on the 1 line. They get a bye. Then when I saw Wingate on the 2 line, I thought, oh, boy, this could be, as a selfish, nice kind of football news guy, I want to see Johnson C. Smith Wingate. So we'll get guaranteed one team advancing. And when I saw Virginia Union pop up on that 7 line, I thought, this is not a good sign for Johnson C. Smith. And, at the end of the day, the losses they had to Livingston and Fayetteville State at the end just was too much for them to overcome in the eyes of the committee. So the champs of the CIAA, Virginia Union, get in ahead of Johnson C. Smith.
Now, who will Lenore-Ryan, Carson Newman, and Wingate play in the D2 playoffs?
Okay, Wingate will play Virginia Union. So, the CIAA SAC matchup. It's a rematch of the 2022 playoffs. Wingate beat them, and they ended up going to the quarterfinals that year. Let's see. Valdosta State, like I said, has a bye. Lenore-Ryan will go to West Alabama. And that is, I believe it's a 4 versus 5 matchup there. No, sorry, a 6 versus 3 matchup. And then Carson Newman is playing Miles. They're out of the SIAC. So you got 7 teams per region there.
Conference, right?
Yep. So so 7 teams per region, 28-team bracket. Top region champs will advance to the Final Four, which is what Lenore-Ryan did last year. So to seeing what they did to make it that far last year, that's got to give them a little bit of spur them on for this year. They've been there. Some of these guys have been there before. They know what it takes to win. The
Bears just keep going through coaches. They lose coaches, and they keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And, Jim, we've talked a lot about football culture. When you talk about the football culture at Lenore-Ryan, that is really strong. And I'd have to give that credit not only to the coaches who have been there, but also to the former director of athletics there, Neil McGahee. This guy, the Geach, was great. He was the guy that a lot of fans here in North Carolina, if you followed ACC sports, you know Neil or know of Neil because he used to do those ACC basketball barnstorming tours that came to all of our high schools back in the 70s, 80s, and I think it petered out somewhere around the mid-90s. But LR, Jim, they have a outstanding football culture, and that goes back to Coach Stasevich and the 1960 national champions at Lenoir-Rhyne with fast Hetty Hop and, of course, the immortal Joe Ryan.
Well, they do have a great tradition, and the interesting thing is that the guy that kicked the field goal in that game was a guy by the name of Marion Kirby. And my first job was at Greensboro Page High School, and I was hired by one Marion Kirby. So having been at Elon and played at Elon, I understand the tradition of Lenoir-Rhyne football. There's not many of us that understand who Clarence Stasevich is there, Mike. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it might be on the lower than 5% of the living football fandom in the Old North State knows who Stas is, but he was also a pretty good coach at some other schools in the state. We'll talk more about memory lane down the line, but we can talk about Elon. Man, Jim, third straight win for the Phoenix, man. They're playing A&T this weekend for a chance to finish at 500. The Trish, man, coming through big time here in the late part of the season.
I got them going now. Hey, tell us about those stats now. The running back had his third straight 100-yard game this week, and played really good defense. The only thing I was disappointed in is giving up the late touchdown because the game was not nearly as close as the score indicated.
Yeah, definitely. They're Elon's finding their stride. As I have a little rule for the Fabulous 15. I want you to be at least 500 to get in. So Elon's been off the list for a while, but so if they win, they'll sneak into the final poll there, which would be well deserved. They've overcome a lot this year. You mentioned the running back, Rushawn Baker. I think our headline was Baker Cooks, 156 yards and touchdowns. Elon puts the icing on a key conference win. And so I think they're starting to play like, maybe we thought they were going to play all along. So they play A&T. It's been a really rough year for A&T. The Aggies looking at another winless conference campaign if they can't pull one off this weekend.
And the final game that we want to talk about here is Western Carolina and Coach Kerwin Bell. Man, he got the best of the Keydets. Tell us about that one, Eric. Victory up in Cullowhee.
Yeah, typical, Western Carolina offense. You look at the score and you're like, yep, 58 points, kind of what we expect. But they're not doing it the past few weeks with Cole Gonzalez. Their preseason player of the year quarterback. Teron Dickens has stepped in again, had another big game, almost 300 yards passing, a couple of touchdowns. They're at 6-5, so they got a chance for a 7th win this weekend. At the very worst, they'll be 500. Which qualifies them for that Fabulous 15 ranking there. So,
this segment brought to you by our great friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and a world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that are second to none. They've grown to 6 Triangle area locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. You can learn more online at AtlanticTireOnline.com.
The Lawson Insurance Group in Raleigh is a family-owned business led by 3 actual brothers who happen to be huge sports fans: Ken Lawson, Miller Lawson, and Michael Lawson. I know these guys, I trust these guys, and I send these guys my own insurance business and that of my family. The next time you have insurance needs, I hope you'll do the same. The Lawson Insurance Group is known for its commitment to community and its dedication to ensuring that North Carolinians and their businesses are prepared for life's inevitable challenges, with the reminder that as a high street insurance partner, Lawson Insurance Group offers local expertise and support that, combined with High Street's extensive national resources, means more choice and support for you as their client. To learn more, search Lawson Insurance Group online. The Lawson Insurance website will be the first link that pops up.
What's your biggest memory that you look back on this past weekend for North Carolina college football?
Well, probably I was at the Wingate game. Under a minute to go. The cigars are starting to come out. I see the water cooler dumped on the coach, and I'm like, you know what? The game's not over yet. And it wasn't. And it's like 4th and 29, and Wingate's got a punt, kind of backed into their own goal line. So, the me who's always worst case scenario for my teams, I'm like, come on, guys, let's not, have something crazy happen. But they ended up punting the ball away. And fitting for Wingate, they got an interception on the first play, ends the game, and then just, mania ensues, and that never gets old. Seeing a celebration atmosphere, kids, like I see, they're young men now, just put their heart and soul into something. And that's when you see D2 football. A lot of people may just cast that off, but that meant something to those guys and the fans and the community. And so that was really special. That'd be one of my favorite memories of the year for sure.
Jim, what was your dominant weekend memory?
Well, I have to ask this question. It's a little bit it's a lot on the negative side. Eric, did I see that St. Andrews gave up 92 points?
Well, I'll say it's only 90. How about that?
Oh, it was only 90. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It was only 90.
646 yards through the air.
Yeah, the quarterback was like 41 of 46 for 650 yards and 11 touchdowns. And I mean, I don't know the course of the game if they were just going to let him go to earn records, but you don't ever want to be on the other side of that kind of headline. And unfortunately, St. Andrews kind of had that. They gave up 84 to Davidson last year. Not sure why they're playing Davidson. And they gave up over 80 in another game this year too. So they've
Wow.
That's the tough time. So we can probably send some positive mojo toward Laurinburg and get that program turned around a little bit.
We need to get St. Andrews to play in a round robin against Greensboro College and Guilford. After Mike Waker started 3-0, they lost 7 straight.
Yeah.
And that's tough to watch. But I tell you, one of the things about Division III football that you got to understand is that Division III football, and it's the reason why Mike Waddell played college athletics. Mike Waddell played college athletics because he was stroking a check to play. Okay, when you're at a Division III school, there's a scholarship, right? You're getting financial aid. It's need-based aid. So every person on the roster is helping keeping that school afloat.
Right.
And it's tough. It's tough stuff, and it's really tough. I don't say that to belittle them. I say that to say the hardest coaching job to me in college football is coaching at a Division III school where you might have at Guilford 140 players and 7 coaches, of which 3 are full-time. Right. I mean, Jim, explain to the folks how tough it is to manage. I mean, when you were at Duke, your last position group that you coached, how many guys did you have in your room that you were directly responsible for?
7.
So if you're on a staff of 7 guys and you have 140, do the math. I mean, that's 20 kids per coach.
Right.
I mean, that is just not logical. And it's unfair to these coaches because Division III coaches, in addition to having an overload of work, also don't get paid jack. I mean, some of those guys at Guilford are making, they're making meal money or getting to sleep on somebody's couch in the office.
Do they still have to teach also in departments?
They're not teaching anymore, not at Guilford in that sense, but they're part-time. I mean, they're coaching and they're working at Lowe's, at a lumber yard or, delivering for DoorDash or something like that. I mean, these are young coaches trying to cut their teeth in a field that's tough to break into, and they'll take these jobs. I mean, we've all heard the stories of what coaches are not paid at the lower levels, and maybe that's why once they do make it, they're saying, man, I deserve this. I paid my dues.
Well, there's a lot of guys out there now, and this is a reflection on my history, and but I still think there are guys that end up at the top of the coaching level. I think some need to go back and they need to serve at Division III levels and high school levels and find out what it's like to wash the clothes and to mow the field and do all that. I appreciate the way that I started my career. I really do. It taught me, Marion Kirby was good for me. He taught me a work ethic. He taught me how to do things the right way, and gave me an opportunity to reach the career, the heights of the career that I had the opportunity to be involved with. So I'm very appreciative of that level. And I was not trying to make fun of St. Andrews at that point in time. I was just trying to say it's unbelievable that you get put into that position. So it's very difficult. Hell, you're talking about a guy that gave up 63 in the national championship game. So I know how bad it is.
Yeah,
it happens. It happens. And we do want to give some flowers out to some coaches here in the Old North State, notably Maurice Flowers, Coach of the Year at Johnson C. Smith, and also his player, Benari Black, who is the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year. One coach was let go this past week. Elizabeth City State's head coach, Marcus Hilliard, has been let go. David Castillo has been named the interim coach, and that goes along, of course, with Mike Houston already dismissed at East Carolina. Perhaps other coaches coming down the line, perhaps not. A lot of tug of war going on right now, especially with the smaller schools. When you get away from the crazy buyouts that we were talking about earlier at Texas A&M and potentially at LSU, man, if you're going to buy out a coach at something that's not at a Power 4 level, that's a big expense, because we can talk about this more in the weeks to come. But when you buy out a coach, you're paying that coach. You're usually paying assistant coaches. You're paying for the transition to come through. And that's a major, major expense. And it's not as easy as some media people like to say. Well, they had a bad year. They got to go. Well, that's something that even as an AD, I don't want to hear that, because that puts pressure on me to maybe make a premature decision on somebody. And that's unfair. I'm not really read up on Marcus Hilliard, but it seems like Elizabeth City State has struggled for some time, Eric.
Yeah, definitely. Just getting to 500 is it's been tough for them. But again, that's the hard part of the job. The expectations are, we all expect wins. You got to deliver the W's on the board. And here's someone for him. That's where he was coached there for a long time. Most of the 2000s, he was on the staff. Elevated to the head job 3 years ago. So tough for him. Hope he lands on his feet. I'm sure he will. And David Castillo is the interim coach for right now. And the athletic department has said they want to try to do the national search that they talk about. So we'll keep a watch on that. But yeah, that's tough, man. If I got fired for every time, had a bad year, I'd be very unemployed.
Let me say this now. We going back to the Brian Kelly. We're in a world now with early signing day, the transfer portal, and the things that go along with that. You risk losing an entire recruiting cycle by dismissing a guy like Brian Kelly at this point in time. Do you take the risk of doing that, or do you live? Look at the University of Florida. They've made the decision very quickly to live with Billy Napier, and I think it's the right decision. Winning's hard, man. Anybody that says winning's easy, they're full of crap now. Winning's hard, especially in the landscape that we're in now, when you may not have as much money to spend on your roster as the guy that you're playing every Saturday. So it becomes a real challenge, no doubt.
Mike Norvell, if he goes 1-11 this year, because they'll beat Charleston Southern, pretty feel good about that one. They're not going to beat Florida. So, Florida State, it seems like Michael Offord, their director of athletics, has already come out saying that he and Mike Norvell are going to solve this thing together. He can't afford to buy him out. He just signed him to that monster extension last year. So, I got to tell you, boy, you talk about the recruiting calendar and how that's creeping up on people right now. There are people for these teams that are struggling. They are losing recruits left and right. And you know who's picking up on it? And we're not going to go into this one. Boy, old Dion. We were crapping on Dion earlier in the year, but damn it, he doesn't have the Buffaloes looking pretty good right now. And Travis Hunter is a dude.
Now, he's a real dude.
He got one dropped on his dome out there late in the game, but you know what? The guy's playing 70 plays a game.
Right.
So, but he's a player, and it will be fun to watch. And I tell you, the one thing I can look forward to every week is coming here and talking with you guys on the fifth quarter. It makes me look forward to the third quarter and the fourth quarter because I know I'm that much closer to seeing you guys here in the fifth quarter. But thank you guys for making time another week here as we recap the week that was college football here in the bold North State. For Eric Lusk of NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com and Jim Collins, veteran coaching legend and Elon graduate, I am Mike Waddell signing off here on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Ain't no channel for champions and chain no fear. Yep, the champ is here. Swiss